With some readers. I need a reader for the first 3 verses. Who will volunteer to read the first 3 verses of Ecclesiastes chapter 5? All right, Boyd's got that. I need a reader for 4 through 7, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Come on now, don't be bashful. Come on. Okay, Diane and then Terry can read 8 through 12. Who else? I see a hand over here. Amy, 13 through 17. And one last text, 18 through 20, 18, 19, just 3 verses. Come on now. Okay, Josh. Let's read Ecclesiastes chapter 5, and then we will discuss it together.
Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Go near to listen rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools who do not know what they do wrong. Do not be quick with your mouth. Do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God. God is in heaven and you are on earth, so let your words be few. As a dream comes when there are many cares, so the speech of a fool when there are many words.
When you make a vow to God, do not delay in fulfilling it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Fulfill what you vow. It is better that you should not vow than that you should vow and not fulfill it. Do not let your mouth lead you into sin, and do not say before the messenger that it was a mistake. Why should God be angry at your words and destroy the work of your hands? With many dreams come vanities and a multitude of words, but fear God.
If you see the poor oppressed in the district, and justice and rights denied, do not be surprised at such things. For one official is eyed by the higher one, and over them both are others higher still. The increase of the land is taken by all, or from the land is taken by all. The king himself profits from the field. Whoever loves money never has money enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with his income. This too is meaningless. As goods increase, so do those who consume them. What benefit are they to the owner, except to feast his eyes on them? The sleep of a laborer is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of the rich man permits him to sleep or no sleep.
There is a grievous evil which I have seen under the sun, riches being hoarded by their owner to his hurt. When those riches were lost through a bad investment, and he had fathered a son, then there was nothing to support him. As he had come naked from his mother's womb, so will he return as he came. He will take nothing from the fruit of his labor that he can carry in his hand. There is grievous evil, exactly as a man is born, thus will he die. So what is the advantage to him who toils for the wind? Throughout his life he also eats in darkness, and with great vexation, sickness, and anger.
Then I realized that it is good and proper for a man to eat and drink, and to find satisfaction in his toilsome labor under the sun during the few days of life God has given him, for this is his lot. Moreover, when God gives any man wealth and possessions, and enables him to enjoy them, to accept his lot and be happy in his work, this is a gift of God. He seldom reflects on the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with gladness of heart.
Very good, thank you. What's it mean to guard your steps when you go to the house of God? Is that because the road's uneven and the gravel might be potholed or something? What's he talking about? Yes, that's what he's talking about. As you're going to the house of God, think about it. Think about it. What are you going there for? Think about what you're going to do. Think about what you're going to say. Have some intention, and let your intention be grounded. What do you think he's talking about when he says the sacrifice of fools? What advice is he giving? Just go ahead and just look right at it. See what he's saying to us. And so what advice is he giving us?
He's telling us to be ready to hear what God says, and the fool's sacrifice availeth nothing. Only those that hear God and obey his word is what avails anything.
How much higher is God than man?
Well, it says he's in heaven and we're on earth.
We
in infinity. We're talking about, well, what's that thing that Buzz Lightyear says? To infinity and beyond. How far is infinity? Well, that's as far as you can go, and then beyond that. That's what Buzz Lightyear says. And that's the comparison of us to God. And if I'm coming to God's house, and He's got a word for me, in other words, we come to hear His word, we come to learn His word, we come to praise Him and thank Him. He's saying, when you go to the house of God, have some gravity. Don't expect to be making a great impact there. You just listen and learn. Humble yourself, I think, is what he's saying before God.
Marty, there's a point there about reverence yourself before God, because who are you standing in front of? You're standing in front of the Creator. And who are we? We're the created. You know, you got to realize your position in life, who God is, and who you are, and what's the whole abundance of the whole deal, where the world is, what your lot in life is. You know, I often wondered why was I born in this time, not some other time when I like Western history and stuff like that. You know, but God knows why.
Is there anybody in the universe who is more questioned and whose motives are more impugned than God's? Now, anything God does, everybody questions it. Well, I was talking with a guy on Facebook today, and he was giving God down the road. God's in favor of slavery, and He's wiped out lots of people, wiped out the Amalekites, and He's in favor of human sacrifice. And he quoted, or he didn't quote, but he referenced Leviticus 10, 1 through 4. Remember what happens in Leviticus 10, 1 through 4? Nadab and Abihu approach God with strange fire, and God destroys them with fire from heaven. So that's his interpretation that God's in favor of human sacrifice. And I'm reading this, and I'm thinking, this kid's 26 years old. And I'm thinking, do you have any clue what it's going to be like when you stand before God one day if you don't change your mind about these things? To question God, not only to question God, but to call God on the carpet and bring Him into judgment. That's just scary. And so Solomon says, when you go to church, you better put your humble hat on and go to learn and hear from God. Yes?
One thing he's trying to say is, we come here for Him. We don't come here for us.
Right.
You know, what we need, what we want, what we desire, it doesn't matter at all.
Exactly.
We are here to give Him praise.
When the discussion was taking place in 1 Corinthians 11, Paul writing to the church about the Lord's Supper, he was saying how they were doing it wrong, and they would come, and some people would have plenty of bread and fruit of the vine, and they would be gluttonous with it, and others would come and they would be poor, and they wouldn't have anything, and there wouldn't be any sharing going on. And he said, what's your problem? Don't you have houses to eat and drink in? This isn't the same kind of meal that you would have in your house. And so we might ask the question today, in our present scenario, in our present culture, don't you have movie theaters to go to, or don't you have a house to entertain yourself in? Don't come to church to be entertained. Come to church to worship. Come to church to bow down before God, heart and mind and soul, and give Him your homage and your thanks, and give Him the glory. Don't come to see what He's got for you. Go to listen to Him, is what I believe this is all about. Yes?
Isn't he saying if you're coming to advance yourself, you know, like as a politician, you go to the right church to be seen, that you're really being more counterproductive?
Well, the example he uses is making a vow. When he says make a vow, what's that got to do with it?
That's a contract between you and God. That's serious, you know. I made a vow, and He expects you to keep it.
You're making
You know,
a commitment.
That's a commitment you cannot get out of. It's best that you don't make one.
You know anybody that made a rash vow in Scripture?
Offered his daughter came out here.
Yeah, he didn't think, he was talking, I'm offer up the first thing that comes out of the tent. And he was thinking about all the animals, I'm sure, that live in the tent. Well, what's the first thing that came out? But his daughter. Oh, great. That was a stupid vow, wasn't it? Saul, when they were in the middle of a battle, said, I don't want anybody to eat anything until we've gotten this far in this engagement. And his son Jonathan saw a honeycomb and dipped his spear into it and ate the end of it. Oh, geez. Okay, you got to die now. What? You're going to suck all the morale out of the army because you're going to stick with this dumb vow you've made. The bottom line is, what Solomon is saying is, don't overcommit yourself. You don't come to try to show how wonderful you are by giving something to God. Come before God in humility to accept what he's got for you. Look what he says about the vow. Do not be hasty in word or impulsive in thought to bring up a matter in the presence of God. For God is in heaven and you're on the earth, therefore let your words be few. What happens when we act in haste? We make mistakes, we mess up.
And we regret it.
What did Benjamin Franklin say? Haste
Makes waste.
makes waste. Just a 3-word proverb that's so true. Who do you know who was impulsive? Good man, but impulsive.
Peter.
Peter was impulsive. What kind of things did he get himself into being impulsive? Yeah, he whacked off Malchus's ear in the garden. Jesus said, hey, put your sword up into its place. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword. He healed Malchus's ear. Peter was the one who said, oh, Lord, hey, bid me to come walking to you on the water. And he got himself in trouble. Now, albeit, Peter was the only one who ever walked on water besides Jesus. But he committed himself and then found out he didn't have the faith to follow through with the commitment. That's the kind of thing that Solomon's talking about here. I'm not trying to badmouth Peter. I'm just saying that he had that impulsive personality and it got him into trouble. He was also the one who, when Jesus said, you're going to be scattered. The shepherd's going to be knocked down and the sheep are going to be scattered. And Peter, oh, I'll never leave you, Lord. Never, ever, ever will I leave you. And what did Jesus say to him?
Deny him 3 times.
He said, get behind me, Satan. Your interest is not in the things of God, but in your own things. And that's where Solomon is hitting right here. Don't be interested in your own stuff when you go to the house of God. Be interested in God's things. Don't be impulsive. Don't be rash or hasty. For the dream comes through much effort, and the voice of a fool through many words. What's that mean? The dream comes through much effort. Where do you think the dream comes from?
The King James Version says it comes from a multitude of businesses.
Okay. The multitude of what?
Of businesses?
What other translations, what do some of the other translations have there in verse 3? Let's hear what you've got.
Multitude of words.
Multitude of words for the words, but what about the dream?
Vanities.
What?
Comes through vanities.
The dream comes through vanities or emptiness?
Effort.
Effort. Dream comes through much effort.
Travail or trials, I think is a pretty good word there too. Comes through
Okay.
travail.
I'm not exactly sure what Solomon is talking about, but does he put it in a good light or a bad light?
Bad one.
I think I see he's not putting it in a very good light. Boyd?
The commentary here says that suggests that in the midst of care, one dreams of bliss, such as a starving person dreaming of a banquet, and in anticipation makes a rash vow.
Yes. The vow is connected to this dream, this vision. What you, in your mind, what you're going to do for God. And I've heard people talk like this. Oh, I'm going to do great things for the Lord. You are? When you read through the scriptures, very seldom, if ever, and I say if ever because I can't think of any instance, somebody starts out saying, I'm going to do great things for God. It's usually God coming to someone and saying, I want you to do something great for me. And what's normally the response?
Who am
I
I?
can't do that. Oh, Lord, no. That's the way God works. Very seldom does anybody come to God and say, hey, I got a great vision. I got a great idea. Let's work with this. That's not the way God works. Boy.
Keep thinking of Burt Reynolds in that washed overboard out in the ocean, and he's swimming toward the shore, going, Lord, I'm going to give you everything if you'll just save my life. As he gets closer to shore, he goes, well, maybe every third day. Closer he gets to the less.
Depending on himself.
The more assured he is of his security, yeah. That's kind of the way it works. I was with a man in his house after a tornado had struck. This was several years ago here. Walking through his house with him. And he was saying, look what happened here. We could have been killed. You know, I'm going to start going to church, and I'm never going to quit church because I know God saved us.
How many times has he came?
That's old history. Made a rash vow. And Solomon says it's better not to vow at all than to make one that you don't fulfill. So the dream comes through much effort. There's a lot going on in your head, in your mind, and you come up with this stuff. And all these words that don't really mean anything. Do you remember what Habakkuk said? We've got a song. Starts out like this. The Lord is in his holy temple. What's the rest of it? Let all the earth keep silence before him. That's what Solomon is saying. And when you make a vow to God, don't be late in paying it. He takes no delight in fools. Pay what you vow. It's better that you should not vow than you should vow and not pay. Don't let your speech cause you to sin. And don't say in the presence of the messenger of God that it was a mistake. Oh, I didn't really mean to make that vow. Why should God be angry on account of your voice? And what's the result?
Destroy thy works.
So it sounds like God doesn't pass this stuff off lightly. You make a vow, you better keep it. Jesus ever talk about any of this kind of stuff?
Matthew 7.
I remember something about a tower. What do you say about the guy building the tower?
Sit down and figure the cost.
Sit down and figure the cost. Because if you start work on this tower and you find out you don't have enough money to finish it, what's going to happen?
Be the laughing
Be a
stock.
laughing stock.
Everybody's going to laugh at you. Or if you see an army coming and you're counting your troops and you don't have enough to whoop him, what do you better do?
Make peace quick.
You better head out and make peace before he gets there. Count the cost. And Jesus was talking in regard to following him. Because people came to him and said, I'll follow you wherever you go. And he said, foxes have holes, birds of the air have nests. I don't have a place to lay my head. You sure you want to follow me? Jesus was not groveling on the ground for followers. People came to follow him. He questioned them, are you sure you want to make this commitment? Do you know what this is going to cost you? And what did Peter say about those who fall away from the faith?
It's better if they'd never known the faith.
It's better that they'd never known than that they come to a knowledge of the faith and commit themselves to it and then fall away. So that's what Solomon is saying here. All right. Any questions about the first 7 verses? Any observations or comments? Look at verse 8. If you see oppression of the poor and denial of justice and righteousness in the province, do not be shocked at the sight. Now see, this was back in Solomon's day. This was 3,000 years ago. By now, we've figured out how to work a justice system so that we don't have the same kinds of problems they had 3,000 years ago.
Somewhere it says there's nothing new under the sun.
Oh, okay. All right. Nothing new under the sun. What about our justice system? I heard the phrase just not long ago, criminal justice system. And I never really thought about that phrase before. Criminal justice system. Is that because the justice we hand out is criminal? Or is it a justice system run by criminals? What does it all mean? What he's talking about here in verse 8 was common then and it's common now. And so he says, don't be shocked. Now, depending on your translation, look at the last part of verse 8. For one official watches over another official, and there are higher officials over them. Literally, instead of official, it is high one. One high one watches over another high one. Who's the ultimate high one?
God.
That's God, and he watches over all of it. And who's going to make things right in the end, in the final analysis?
God.
That will be God. And so it's as if Solomon is saying to us, you're going to see this, you won't be able to do anything about it. Remember chapter 1, I think it's verse 10, Ecclesiastes 1:10. No, it's not 1:10. 1:15. What is crooked cannot be straightened, and what is lacking cannot be counted. Are we ever going to get our justice system completely right? Now, I'm not asking, can it be improved? If we get some honest people in there, can it be made better? Our political system, can it be done better? Well, sure, it could be done better. Is it going to be done better? I don't know. But it'll never be perfect. It's already crooked. It can't be made straight. We can work at it. We can try. But the bottom line is, there's a lot of dishonesty in the world. Our founding fathers of the nation, not the founders of the church, that was Jesus and the apostles, but the founders of the nation said that our form of government will only work if the population is moral. That was what they said. They knew that if the population was immoral, it won't work. One of our first justices said, we will either be governed by the Bible or by the bayonet. It makes good sense. Because if individuals don't live according to what's right, then somebody is going to have to enforce what's right. And it seems to me like we're heading farther and faster into that area of being governed by the bayonet than we would ever want to. Now, verse 9, kind of trying to put all this together, depending on how your translation goes, verse 9 kind of puzzles me. He's talking about the oppression of the poor and one watching over another in verse 8. And then he says, after all, a king who cultivates the field is an advantage to the land. Now, before we discuss this, what do some of the other translations have? Verse 9.
It says, moreover, the profit of the earth is for all. The king himself is served by the field.
Okay, so that sounds a little different, like it's got a different emphasis. Anybody else got a different translation than that? Who eats the produce of the field?
The master of the field.
What's that?
The master of the field and anybody he gives it to.
Okay. Well, when you go to the grocery store, what do you buy?
Product.
You buy the produce of the field. When the president sits down to eat, what does he eat?
Product.
He eats the produce of the field. It's the same stuff. Wheat, barley, rye, all these grains we grind up, we make bread. Green beans, carrots, potatoes. It doesn't matter how well off you are, you're going to eat the same stuff everybody else does. It seems to me that what Solomon is saying is, even though you've got all this stuff going on in government and the justice system isn't quite working right, the purpose of government is to provide for the people, and government by and large will do that one way or another. And it evens out because everybody's going to eat the same produce of the field. And it's almost as if he's saying, God's going to even everything out too. Now you make of that what you want. Verses 8 and 9, I think I need to do a little more study on that. But that's as far as I've gotten on it so far. And then we come to verse 10, and it's refreshingly clear. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves abundance with its income. And what is that?
It's vanity.
It's vanity. So what do we do about that? Anybody in here like money? Okay, for those of you not holding up your hand, if I offered you $20, would you take it?
I'm gonna wait till you get to 100. No.
People of today would ask for more.
Yeah.
20 wouldn't be enough.
20 wouldn't be enough. Well, that's not even half a tank of gas. Man, $20, that's chicken feed.
Marty, it says money is the root of all evil, but it's actually, money's not bad, it's how it's being used is the root of all evil. And it's okay to have money, but it says here, this person that loves silver or loves money will not be satisfied because he can't get enough. And that's the problem.
Well, the scripture actually says the love of money is the root of all evil. It's a huge difference.
Right.
Money's like anything else. Everything there is on the planet is a resource for us to use, and God expects us to use it. Now, if we take some of the resources, for example, if you want to go to the mall and buy some clothes, you need some new clothes, and what you do for a living is you're a lumberjack, you can't exactly load up your truck with a bunch of lumber and take it down to the mall and have to try to trade for some clothes, unless there's somebody that owns a clothing store that wants to build a house. What you do is you take your lumber, you find somebody who's in the lumber market, you sell it to them, they give you money, you take that money. This is the way the economy works. God knows how this works. So now you've got money. You take your money downtown and you buy something with it. And as long as you understand that lumber is just a resource that God has given for us to use and profit by, and money is a resource that God has given for us to use and profit by, God, according to Romans 13, and other passages as well, has ordained governments, and governments establish their economy. They're the ones who print the money. They're the ones who gather the gold upon which the money is supposedly based. Anyway, you can call that a political commentary if you want to. But the bottom line is, in this world, there isn't any economy that's totally trustworthy. I mean, we can criticize our own, but there's no other government in the world any better, really. But if we understand that all these things that God gives us are just resources for us to use, and our real faith should be where?
In God.
In God, then we don't have a problem with money. But if we get too wound up in this world's economy, then we might fall in love with money, and then we'll never be satisfied.
Well, you know, where we put our love and where we put our effort, that's where our heart is.
Right.
If we put it into making money, then we're that fool up there that takes his sacrifice to
Yes.
the altar.
It's a
Because
bad investment.
We're worshiping something totally foreign.
It's part of this world, and this world is going away. See if you haven't seen truth in verse 11. When good things increase, those who consume them increase. So what is the advantage to their owners except to look on? What's that mean? What happens if you have a lot of land?
You usually want more.
Number one, you pay a lot of taxes. Number two, somebody's got to mow it. Or if you have an ice storm, somebody's got to go in and clear out all those branches that have fallen down. Somebody's got to keep up the fences. Somebody's got to make a decision. Are we going to lease this out to somebody who's got cattle, who wants to run cattle on our land? And if you do that, well, who's going to draw up the contracts? How much are you going to charge? What happens if they don't pay? No matter how much stuff we've got, it comes with responsibility. And the more stuff you've got, the more responsibility you've got, the more you've got to look after. I remember when I first started doing our taxes, because I still do our taxes every year, and I started looking at these forms, because you don't know at first what you need and what you don't need, and I was looking at all these legal terms and financial terms and deductibles and amortization. I still don't know what an amortization is. And I'm thinking, what is all this craziness? I said, I'm glad I'm poor. I'm glad I don't have anything, because just doing taxes would give me a heart attack every year. And so that's what Solomon's talking about. The more stuff you got, those who consume them increase. What's the advantage to their owners is the question, except to look on. Do you know anybody who is really wealthy and who has a sense of joy and happiness because they are really wealthy? I have to say I don't. I know some wealthy people who are happy, but it doesn't come from their wealth. It comes from a sense of faith and security in God, and because of that, they're free to enjoy their wealth, which is what Solomon keeps telling us throughout the book. He's going to tell us at the end of this chapter. Here's what I've seen to be good and fitting, to eat, drink, and enjoy oneself and all one's labor which he toils under the sun. That's good and fitting. That's not vanity. That's not emptiness. That's good and fitting. We'll come to that. But we're still on verse 12, verse 11 and 12. The sleep of the working man is pleasant. Amen?
Yes.
You work hard all day, you get home, take a shower, whatever, get something to eat, and then you fall into bed. Man, it feels so good to sleep when you're tired. On the other hand, have you ever gone to bed and you're not really tired? What happens?
You can't go to sleep.
You lay there, you can't go to sleep, and you toss and turn. And you toss and turn and toss and turn until you get so wore out you fall asleep. By the time you fall asleep, then it's time to get up. You're thinking, man, I should have worked hard yesterday. You go to sleep as a lazy bum, you don't sleep well. The sleep of the working man is pleasant, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich man does not allow him to sleep.
Could that be because he's worried about his riches and what he might do with them, what he can, more he can get?
Well, have you ever gone to bed with a full stomach? Especially one of those full stomachs where you eat. Remember in Daniel, in the first chapter, and his three compatriots, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, said, we're not going to eat the king's food. And it was, I picture that food as the royal stuff that's soaked in honey and all kinds of, whatever kind of sugars and sweets they had then. The stuff made with things that really isn't good for you. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll go to a restaurant, and it's one of those restaurants where they think they're gonna feed you all this rich, fattening, high carb, high sugar content stuff, and it's like the first few bites, hey, that's pretty good stuff, and then you kind of feel, and you can't drink enough water after that. It's like you got to wash it out of your. That ever happened to anybody besides me? It's just me, okay? Yeah. So the full stomach of the rich man does not allow him to sleep. There's much to be said for hard work. There's much to be said for moderation. But I think he's talking about those who have the full stomach and they're gluttons. Their primary interest is in the things of this world, and all of that robs them of their rest and their peace. There's a grievous evil, he says in verse 13, which I've seen under the sun. It's riches being hoarded by their owner to his hurt. And when those riches were lost through a bad investment, and he'd fathered a son, there was nothing to support him. What's happening here? What kind of a picture is he painting for us? Does the guy have money?
He's got money, but it's hurting him to have money.
He's got money. What's he do with it?
He's hoarding it, not
Hoards it
profiting
all
anybody.
up? Is he getting any pleasure out of it?
No.
No pleasure. So finally at some point, some shyster comes along and says, hey, I got a deal here, you can't go wrong. You'll double your money. Oh, great. Well, if I'll double my money, here it is. And what happens to it? It's gone. It's a Ponzi scheme or whatever. It's gone. What did a lot of people do in 1929 when the stock market fell? They committed suicide. Because all of their life's hopes were wrapped up in their money. When the money was gone, what do we call our system today that's supposed to provide for us when we're old?
Social Security.
Social Security, and it's all based on money. If you want to be socially secure, you got to have money. That's the idea. So he's talking about somebody who works and he makes money, but he hoards it up, doesn't do anything good, doesn't use it, doesn't enjoy it, and finally loses it. And now he's got a son, it says. And there's nothing to support that son. There could have been, but now there's nothing. As he'd come naked from his mother's womb, so will he return as he came. He'll take nothing from the fruit of his labor that he can carry in his hand. What in the world does this have to do with us? How can you and I apply this to make it work in our lives, or is this just something for rich people who have a lot of money?
This should help you realize that where it talks about the labors A man that has labor sleeps well. And you come into this world with nothing, so therefore don't expect nothing. You have to labor to earn something. Even our salvation, there's a condition there. You trust in God. You believe God. You're obedient to His teachings. That is an in-reward product. If you don't put any effort in it, you don't get anything out of it. And as you come in this world naked, you'll leave this world naked. Except what you have in your hand, what very little it might be. I mean, if you just labor for what's in your hand, you're not doing very much labor.
Right.
You know.
I don't normally like to do this, but I'll give you a little personal testimony here. My dad was a good man. He didn't make a lot of money in his life, but he was a good man. He lived a good life. He taught me a lot of good things. And when he died, he was gone. But I continued living out many of the values that he taught me, and they benefited me and continue to benefit me today. What he left to Mom left her so that she didn't have to struggle. She wasn't hurting financially, but she didn't have a whole lot of money either. When she finally died, what was left of her estate was divided up between the four of us, and I think it was like $3,500. Now that's not a lot of money, $3,500. How many of you could blow that in one weekend? You said, weekend? Give me a couple hours on eBay, man. I get rid of that. Put me on Amazon. But what my parents gave me has more value than any amount of money. You can never put a price tag on what my parents gave me because of the things they taught me, the way they trained me, the way they raised me, the values they imparted, the love they showed me. They provided for me in so many more ways, much more infinitely than money ever could have. And so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, here's a guy, it seems like his whole life is wrapped up in his money, and he hoarded it, and then he finally lost it, and he didn't have anything to pass on to his son. And there's no reference here to teaching his son about faith, or teaching his son about generosity, or teaching his son about trust, or teaching his son about having a family commitment that makes your life worth living. Because it doesn't matter how much money you've got. If you don't have people that you feel like are family, you don't have anything to live for. That's why heaven's going to be so great. It's going to be nothing but family up there. And there won't be any of the family squabbles that we have down here. Because they're all going to go somewhere else. So, not really. It's going to be like that poem. I wish I had saved that poem. It was this guy, he goes to heaven, and he's looking around saying, how did she get there? And how did he get there? And I can't believe they're there. And all these people, and he can't figure out because they did this and did that. And how could they be there? And then he realized they were all looking at him thinking, how did you make it? And that's probably going to be the way it is. But that's not the picture God's painting for us of this guy through what Solomon has to say. Uh, 17. Throughout his life he also eats in darkness and with great vexation, sickness, and anger. And I'm asking, does it have to be that way?
No.
It doesn't have to be that way. Now, if you get sick, you can't always help it if you get sick, but can you help eating in darkness? If you live in the light of God's Word? Can you help being angry all the time? If you have a father who's forgiven you and teaches you how to be gracious and merciful? And even if you're physically sick, you don't have to be spiritually sick or emotionally sick. Jesus came to give us life. And he came to give us more abundant life. And that's what we all really hunger and thirst for. And then we get to 18 and 19. Here's what I've seen to be good and fitting. Eat, drink, and enjoy oneself in all one's labor in which he toils under the sun during the few years of his life which God has given him, for this is his reward. When you go home tonight, you open your fridge and you see all that food, eat some of it. You get in your pantry and you find cookies, eat some cookies. Enjoy what God has given you. You've got a television set, turn it on. Watch something good. You can find something good on there if you want to, or turn it off. Maybe you've got a radio. Listen to some nice music. Do you have a comfortable chair? Sit in it. Wrap yourself up in a comfortable blanket. Enjoy your home, enjoy your family, enjoy everything that God has given you. And don't go around feeling guilty because there's other folks who are doing without. Lord bless them. We know there's folks going without. That doesn't mean you have to be miserable with what you have. If he's given it to you, enjoy it. If you've got children, play with your children. Get some games out of the closet or wherever you keep the games and play games. Make something up if you want to. Just enjoy what God has given you. Take a vacation. Go somewhere. See something. Rent a movie. Enjoy life. Furthermore, verse 19, as for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth, he's also empowered him to eat from them and to receive his reward and rejoice in his labor. This is a gift of God. Isn't that fantastic? That's so liberating to read this. And it's not the first time we read it. You go back into chapter 2, the end of chapter 2, this is the first time we see it, verse 24. There's nothing better for a man than to eat and drink and tell himself that his labor is good. This also I've seen, that it is from the hand of God. Chapter 3, verse 12. There's nothing better for them than to rejoice and to do good in one's lifetime. Moreover, that every man who eats and drinks sees good in all his labors. It is the gift of God. Chapter 3, verse 22. I've seen that nothing is better than that man should be happy in his activities, for that is his lot. Who will bring him to see what will occur after him? And then here we are in chapter 5, reading the same thing in verses 18 and 19. And then verse 20, the last verse, chapter 5. For he will not often consider the years of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the gladness of his heart. What should typify somebody who has faith in God?
Joy.
Joy. That's what Solomon is saying. Isn't it interesting that he starts out, everything's empty, everything's vain, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. And then he tells us here, hey, God's going to keep you occupied with good things so that you can have a life filled with joy, gladness of heart. Does that mean we'll never suffer any difficulty? Look at Hebrews 12. I'm so glad God saw fit to put this passage in here, because I have clung to this so many times and taken such great strength from this. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us also lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Why did Jesus endure the cross?
So you receive the joy of God.
There was a joy set before him. God says, son, do you want to have all these people as your brothers and sisters? Do you want to cleanse them of their sin and have them live with you for all eternity? Jesus said, yes, that is great. I'll be so filled with joy to have them. That was his joy, looking forward to our salvation. Because of that joy he had in his mind and in his heart, he endured the cross. And so we look at our lives and we see whatever troubles we have, and we know, well, we got problems. But there's a joy on the other side. There's a picture. This life is transient. It's going to come to an end. All the problems we've got will come to an end. And if we stay faithful, we'll be on the other side with the Lord, enjoying the joy that he found so marvelous that he stayed on the cross. That's our lesson tonight. Lord willing, we'll come back next week to chapter 6. Questions, comments, observations? Y'all are a quiet bunch.
Billy.